When you see properties come online and they're already sold, that's called a pre-market strategy. Is it the right thing to do for the seller? Here are our thoughts and more in this episode of The Den. The Den, powered by the Lions Group, where we talk real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. We're a small team of partners sharing what we've learned along the way. Backed by over $500 million in real estate sales and over 2,300 successful transactions. You'll hear from proven experts and industry leaders with a fresh take on what's happening in real estate and beyond. Welcome to The Den. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to be talking about the pre-market strategy, where homes are sold before they go to market, and not all buyers get an opportunity to see those properties. So is it really the right thing to do for a seller? But before we get into that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lions Group. To my right, Paul, hand me the rock berry, Aspen, the Ninja Gruen, and the boss, Shannon Martinez. My name is Ben, premeditated killer of the chocolate bunny.
Oh my God.
Easter. Yeah. I mean, we have pre-market, we have premeditate, and I just figured I'd go with premeditate because
right.
I stalked that little bunny.
You're already thinking about it.
That was on the fly. Right?
Yeah.
He did not have that.
So let me ask you real quick. Is it the hollow bunny that you like or the full chocolate?
I like the Reese's eggs.
Cadbury
The eggs. Oh, okay. That wasn't the question, people.
Oh, yours.
Like,
you picked the wrong one.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Peeps. Let's start the Peeps conversation.
Oh, I don't like
Okay.
Peeps.
Oh, good heavens. Good heavens. We don't want to go down that road.
I'll take
Sorry,
the Peeps.
Paul.
You guys can give me the Peeps.
But I do. I stalk that little bunny, man. I'm like, I'm going to nail that thing. When everyone goes to sleep, chocolate bunny's mine. So anyways, okay. Pivoting back, pre-market strategy. Oftentimes you may see as a consumer or client or just someone that pays attention to real estate, you'll see a home come on the market and it'll already be sold. And you may go, what in the world happened there? Well, that's called a pre-market strategy and it's very effective. But the big question today and what we're going to dive into, is it really the right thing for a seller? Yes or no? Why? And can it give a buyer an advantage or a disadvantage in the market? So, Paul, coming to you first today.
All right.
We have this thing in real estate. We have rules that we have to abide by. And one of those rules is called clear cooperation. Can you discuss that a little bit? Tell our audience what clear cooperation is.
Clear cooperation is a rule that the National Association of Realtors came up with, saying that the moment that you market a property to the public, within 24 hours, it has to be in the MLS.
Okay. And that's it.
In
black
a
and white.
nutshell.
Yeah. Why?
So,
Why?
because once you've marketed it to, and they've made some changes over the years. Used to be any marketing. You talk to somebody within 24 hours, it had to be in the MLS. Now you can talk one-on-one with somebody in your brokerage or outside of your brokerage, but it's just one-on-one. But they do that so that everybody has a fair shot at a listing. So it has to get to the public once it's publicly marketed.
So if you put a sign out, if you post something online, coming soon, right? And coming soons have had a big issue. But coming soon, within 24 hours of that post, you need to have that listing online so everyone can have access to that potential property and maybe make an offer or have an opportunity for their buyers. And that's the clear cooperation. I think a lot of that stems from, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone's can chime in here, but that stems from, what we don't want is if you're releasing it to half of the general public and not the other half, right? If you're releasing it just to some companies, but not to other companies.
Yeah, and there are rules that say you can pre-market in your own office. That's legal. You can use your own sphere or your own contacts to market it for a certain period of time. There are some new rules about delayed marketing that are kind of confusing, so I'm not going to talk about those. But getting things, we watch it as, members of the MLS say, if you're going to start marketing, you have to have it on because all of our buyers have to have a shot.
Yeah, at that point. But you just hit on something that's very important. And it really goes to the core of what we're talking about today, which is the pre-marketing component. You have the ability as a realtor and a client to say, hey, I want you to market it just to your network or potentially just to your company as a whole before you actually take it live. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Ladies, do you concur?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Pretty straightforward. So
Podcast over.
podcast done. That's a wrap. Shannon, I'm going to come to you and ask you real quick. Why would someone just want me to market? If I was your listing agent, why would you want me just to market it within my network or within our company? That's it.
So there would be a lot of reasons. We've had just specific reasons we've had customers that maybe have security issues, maybe are, in a divorce situation or something of that nature, and they don't want their house on the open market. They don't want anybody to be able to call a realtor and walk into their home. Sometimes people don't want other people knowing what they're doing and what moves they're making. So that would be a great reason to say, do you have a buyer in mind, or do you have someone within your office, so that we don't have to be public for my neighbors or my in-laws or my ex-husband or whoever to see what moves I'm making. I also think there's a lot of people that it's just a lot of anxiety to put their house on the market. Sometimes also, you might have people that can't really get their house ready. Maybe their house just needs a lot of work, or, they're elderly for any reason. And they just feel like, I'm not going to be able to get this ready. I can't keep up with showings. Do you have an investor that'll just buy it, the way it is? Or, I'd rather have 3 or 4 people come in and find a buyer for it rather than have it on the open market and have, a dozen people walk through my house. I don't want to lock up my medications, or I have, elderly parents I'm going to have to remove for every single showing. There's a lot of reasons why people would not want their house open to everyone in the public to have access to.
See, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what the general public doesn't see.
Right.
Like, they just see a home go pending and go, hey, that's not fair. I didn't get a shot at that.
Right.
And I can understand that. But when you bring that argument to the table, well, I have elderly parents, and getting them out and cleaning up the house.
I don't want people to see what I have in my house. A lot of people say that. I just don't want people to see what I have in my house.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I can certainly understand that part of it. Aspen, what are your thoughts? What would be a reason the seller would want someone like me just to market it to my network of buyers, or to our company as a whole?
I think it just creates a lot more, a lot more of what's happening, because we can say in our office, you have to be pre-approved to set up a showing. You have to do these things. You have to take off your shoes when you're in the house. There's all of these things that we would want our, buyers to have done before they're going into someone's home. But it's really hard to regulate that when it comes to other offices. That's kind of one reason. But for I had a pocket listing where I didn't market it outside, was just because of a safety concern. It was a divorce situation. She was moving. She did not want her ex-husband to know that she was moving out of state. So we kept it off of everything for safety reasons. And I don't know how she would have sold it a different way without publishing it. Because, even these things that move quickly, even if it goes under contract in a day, it still takes a while to actually sell. That's just leaving opportunity for something to happen. So for me, the biggest reason to allow them is for the safety concerns, but also people just don't want people in their house. Maybe they're sensitive to different perfumes, or who knows, maybe they have different allergies and they have to be really particular about who comes in and out. And so they want a little bit more vetting. In that case, it's easier to have 20 agents or 20 brokers say, these have to fit, versus just opening it up to hundreds or thousands of brokers and people.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people say, hey, well, that you did a disservice to your seller, right? Because you didn't get the max exposure to the market. You didn't let the market determine where that house should have been. Is that a flawed argument, or is there some basis of truth there?
How I see it is, yes, if you put it on the open market, you may have multiple buyers and it could run up your price. And that's always something to consider. But in certain cases, like we're talking about, where they really don't want that done, or they really don't want a lot of people in their house, I think my best argument for that is, a lot of times, if you have a buyer maybe that's been looking and this is the right fit for them, they're not going to dicker. They're not going to dicker on the price, and they're not going to dicker on all the little things that need to be done, because they understand they have a shot at a home that they're not competing with other people. And that leaves them open to be a little bit more flexible, to not want to, hammer that seller with something. They understand that the seller is getting what they want, and they're not getting any competition.
It's a fair deal for everybody.
Exactly. So I don't feel like any place that I know that I've ever sold off market or pre-sold, or that I even know that any of us have, I don't think in any way they could have done better by going to an open market. I mean, maybe they would have gotten more money, but they wouldn't have gotten other things that they wanted. They wouldn't have gotten their privacy, or maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have gotten more money. But
because maybe that person wouldn't have submitted that high if it was sitting there for a week or two.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's
month.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could work against you in that
Yeah. I
part.
think people don't see that side of it either. They don't see that side of it, is that sometimes it's a huge advantage for people to work off market.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay for that.
Yeah, because if a listing goes live, right? If a buyer is excited and they have the inside track on a property and they're going to give you the terms, right? What you risk is if you go to market and you don't create or generate a bunch of activity and you don't get the offers, then that buyer that was considering making an offer goes, maybe I shouldn't give them the terms. Maybe I should negotiate a bit.
Yeah, nobody else is in there trying to get at this property.
Yep.
Instead of it being a win-win for everybody. That it is one situation where if it just fits for everybody, they're getting the price that they want. They're getting it for the price that they want. It's a win-win. No one feels slighted or that they went under, for the most part, for pocket listings. And I think people think it happens all the time. It doesn't happen. It's not the majority of sales, at least for most of us.
No, the majority of them hit the open market. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Paul Berry, a partner at the Lions Group. We're dedicated to making your real estate experience the best it can be. If you're looking to buy or sell, go to sjcbroker.com and watch our informational video series. These videos break down the process of buying and selling. While you're there, schedule a private consultation with one of our partners. We'd love to sit down and talk strategy and give you a real advantage in today's market. You deserve the best, so take those steps, and we'll see you soon. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I think our office, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is our office is very good about pre-marketing. We pre-market a lot, and we try to sell to our network of buyers when we can, when it makes sense. But of course, there is some liability there for the realtor. I would say there is some culpability if it's not handled properly. Does anyone want to chime in on some thoughts of how that could not be handled properly? Because I've seen it play out over the years.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about. Is the listing agreement doesn't say go out and find me other brokers that have buyers. It says sell my house. So it's our job to sell the house, and now we've put into the listing agreements, will I work with non-represented buyers and all of that kind of stuff. So it gets pretty convoluted. It used to be just, you're going to sell my house however you can. If I have to go out and find another buyer, I will. So we call it pocket listings, and the people that say it's unfair are only looking at price. For all the other reasons that we've talked about, I think it's a very good strategy to have. When it can go wrong is when one side or the other, if you're representing both sides and doing a pocket listing, I think that's how it could go bad, that you're not really, or some realtors might favor one side over the other. I think that could be a hard thing. And then say, well, I didn't go to market. You wanted to sell to your buyer. Now this is a bad deal. I've seen that before.
That's just being picky. Like, pick who you work with that wouldn't do that. Because we've all done dual agency or dual transaction coordinators, whatever it is. I think it's dual representation. Yeah, I'm like, that we've all done it, and they're the easiest deals.
They really are,
if you are fair and ethical and following the rules and doing everything the right way. Because for me, I'm not worried about saying the wrong thing because I'm going to disclose everything anyways. So it makes it simpler, but I could see that definitely being an issue for some people.
Well, and we just saw Washington State just said that they just outlawed pocket listings. So they must have had some issues over there that,
I think that is
like
just such overreach.
I think so
you
too.
cannot tell a seller that they have to list their house on the internet with all of their pictures or the MLS. And that's really what it comes down to. If you're sending it on the MLS, it's out there. Like, people can send that listing and now they have it's on their computer. They have all the pictures of everything. They know where all your safes are. They know if you have, I think that is such overreach. If someone wants to sell their house to whoever, then they should be allowed to do that.
And you even think about like how many times, and I just had this happen the other day. I had somebody call me for a market analysis, and they said, we're going to do a little bit of work over the summer. We're probably going to move by the end of the year. So, but I want you to just keep it in mind in case that right buyer comes along. Well, I don't want to have to put it on the MLS to be able to do that. If I have somebody that comes to me and I say, you know what, I've got these people out here that I talk to, and they're going to move a little later in the year. Let's go talk to them. Let's go have a look at this place. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to bring these people together, because at the end of the day, that's our job, is to bring buyers and sellers together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily to bring it to everybody and then decide who the right one is.
And it's also, this is going to maybe sound controversial, it's also not to get the highest price. I had an investor that asked me to come out, and they had this house that they had been using as a rental, and the tenants were out, and it was in pretty rough shape, but I kind of gave them a price of what I thought we could sell it for now, and then what I thought we could sell it for if they fix some things up. And the price that I gave them, which was, the lower price sell it now, he's like, what if we dropped that another $25,000? I was like, I could find a buyer today then, because it was a lower priced house, and made some calls and sold it in an hour. Like that, to him, the time was worth that. He didn't want to deal with it anymore. He was over it. He didn't want to do any of the repairs, and was done. Yeah. So, I hate to say it, but that's competition. That's free market.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you choose who you want to work with.
Yeah.
Well, and there's some other situations too, for sale by owners. So it doesn't have to be on the MLS. We can, or you have a listing agreement, and then the neighbor says, hey, my mother wants to come and buy it. We don't have to list it now. We've got a buyer before it goes to market. All of those things are now what we're talking about: off-market listings, pocket listings.
And I think people also don't think about the fact that there are times that we know we should go to market. I have a great example. I had that tiny house in La Plata. I can look at the comps. I can see what it's worth, but I also know it's cute and it's really different. And I know what people are going to pay for it probably. Mm-hmm. And so, even if I have a couple people, I would kind of rather get it out there, because I think I want to let the market set that price. I know what the comps say, but I know what the buyers are going to say. And I would rather than run it up. So it's not like we just automatically choose that because it's better for us. And we feel like, I would much rather sell it myself before it goes out anywhere. I could have sold that myself before it went out anywhere, but I can get them more money if I've got a couple people. So we always try to make those decisions. What's going to be the best for this individual seller, not what's going to be the best for us.
And if someone is getting a loan and it's way more than the comps are showing because you got 6 offers, appraisers will take that into consideration, because that is market value now.
Absolutely. If I say I sold it off market, it's never been there, but we're selling it this far over the comps, they're going to question that.
Yeah.
But if you say I had 5 offers and they were all over asking price, that's a huge factor for them to take into consideration.
And they do, because that's market value now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 2 excellent points, ladies. I mean, the first one, Shannon, in the sense that, if someone contacts me and says, I have a seller right now, actually, that says, hey, Ben, if you find a buyer for my house, just know I'm wanting to sell. And I'm like, okay, perfect. So 3 months go by. Why am I going to push to put it on the MLS? They don't want to have it on the MLS. And if I find a buyer for it, that's exactly what we're doing. To your point, Aspen, price isn't everything for everybody. I mean, there's so many other levers for sellers. Most people think, generally speaking, price is it. I mean, price is the thing. It's not. It's a wake-up call, and it's a little controversial. But to your point, to your example, there are a lot of people that I want privacy. I want this done quickly. It doesn't matter if I get top dollar for it. I just want this handled professionally and done. And so there's a lot of reasons why pre-market strategy really works well. To Paul's point, the liability component, there can be liability. I've seen it happen over the years where a realtor has engaged a seller and then sold it way below market value, unbeknownst to the seller. And that stuff happens. But I think what's going on in Washington State right now, where a good friend of mine, I've got several realtor friends up there, are going to be dealing with this challenge where they have no ability to pre-market a property that's coming up that is their listing and rightfully should be called or directed by the seller in how it's marketed, right? So when there's overreach like that, there's government overreach, then that hampers the ability of the seller to market their listing or their asset in a way that they want. So,
And I do know that they have agency up in Washington, because I ran into a buyer that was moving here, selling their property up there, and they ended up losing all their furniture and taking an offer $50,000 under list price. And the realtor said, "Here's your deal." And it was already signed.
wow. So explain to our audience what agency is, Paul.
Oh, hell.
We got a few minutes here because I think it's important for, and we'll have a whole episode about this, the difference between a transaction broker and agency and fiduciary duties and disclosure of adverse material facts, but then basic broker duties. There's all kinds of stuff that plays into it. But just explain to our audience what agency is.
Agency is where you are actually fiduciary. You owe fiduciary responsibility to your client. So that means you can make decisions, you can spend their money, you can do all of those things, but also on the back end, if something goes wrong, you're also part of the contract. Now, we don't do that in New Mexico. We're transaction brokers, which means we just give our clients the information they need to make decisions. Agency can be a very easy way to do real estate for buyers and sellers because they don't have to negotiate. But it also can go the other way pretty quickly.
Yeah. I explain to a lot of my clients, I just say, look, there's liability on both sides. You could do something that gets me in trouble, and I can do something that gets you in trouble. I can enter you into a contract that you don't want to be in. And that's agency. Now, the part of agency is you owe fiduciary duties, similar to a doctor, an attorney, professionals like that, where you owe confidentiality. You owe, beyond honesty and reasonable care, you owe other fiduciary duties that these clients expect, right? So that you are working solely for them. You cannot really, in theory, have a dual agency situation and navigate that properly, because now you're working in the best interest of both clients at the same time on paper. Now that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, that's well, you can do dual agency,
Yep.
but now your client is the contract.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So it gets convoluted, but dual representation is a little bit different. That's what we do here in New Mexico. And we're going to have a podcast topic just specifically about dual representation, where you can actually help facilitate the negotiation, fair and transparent, and hopefully they come to terms. And if not, you part ways. And there's a lot less liability there. But full circle back to the pre-market strategy. What other liability do you all see if it's not done correctly?
I think the biggest argument we hear is not really from even other, buyers might be a little bit bummed, like, oh, I would have looked at that. But it's mainly from other realtors or other agents or brokers, whoever it might be in the area. But this is where it might be a little bit, I don't even know if it's controversial to say, your buyers aren't my buyers. My duty is to my people. I am supposed to be selling the house for my people how they would like it. I'm supposed to be helping my buyers find things they would like. You and your clients aren't really my problem. And that it's kind of harsh to say, but that is how it works. And that's how it works in every single industry as well. Of course, we want to work together and we want to cooperate with everybody, but sometimes the seller just doesn't want to do it, and that they want to have their privacy, and that's I think should be completely fine. I'm very surprised Washington State decided to move that direction, because to me, I think it's kind of an overreach with personal property.
Yep.
But interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. And I don't know all the specifics. I don't know if it's just unless there's certain provisions provided, the seller can sign off. They have to sign something saying, yes, I want this pre-market to happen. If they're more pointed with that, or if there's just a general blanket, and it wouldn't surprise me in Washington. I've lived there, so I know that there's just a blanket, hey, you can't do pre-market strategies with your listing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Disclosure. Go ahead. I was going to say disclosure is everything. You should disclose everything. You should give people all of their options, but then trust that they're going to make the best decision for themselves. Telling people what they can and can't do, I think it's very interesting. Real estate is so interesting because we see this all the time, but you're not having, I know doctors and lawyers and they all have their own rules, but as long as they're following within the rules that are set, they can kind of operate how they want. For some reason, there seems to be more and more and more overreach on how we are allowed to do business. And it's affecting how, in return, how buyers and sellers are able to do their business as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think
well said.
I think we're acting as lawyers without the license or the degree.
I do think you should be a lawyer to be a realtor, actually.
I think
It's not a
there's
bad
a lot
idea.
more education that needs to happen. But I think in Washington, you talk about if there's a waiver or something. I don't know many laws that realtors can just waive away. I don't think there's a
Yeah.
waiver on this one.
Sure.
Is it a law?
The legislature came up with it.
Okay.
So I think so.
Yeah, and I don't know how they, the caveats. And I'll have to reach out to some of my friends up there and see how that. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, even on the portal world, now for our general audience, you may not know what a portal is, but think of how you search for homes like Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, Compass, some of these Realtor.com, some of these companies, right? There's a whole nother war going on. It's called the portal war, where they're vying for your attention in your business. And behind the scenes, there's lawsuits going back and forth, specifically between two big giants, Zillow and Compass. And they are really trying to jostle to find out where they're going to land in regard to access to these properties. And what's on the table right now is that Zillow has kind of stood up and said, if you're going to list these properties on Compass and pre-market them to your network, you're not allowed to list them on Zillow, which severely harms a seller. So that's a whole nother play. Did I say that right? I mean, there's
Until
a lot
it switches brokerages. It's not even
okay.
okay. So yeah, what Zillow essentially was saying was, because I think a lot of people don't realize Zillow is a brokerage, just like Remax or Coldwell Banker. They have other things along with them as well, but they are a brokerage. So they're saying that if you're going to do the delayed marketing specifically and put it into your MLS as delayed marketing, where it only shows to, your office, whenever you go and you change that from delayed marketing to now active listing to everybody, it's not going to automatically go into Zillow. So Compass is suing them saying, but we're allowed to do the pocket listings. We're allowed to do this. Delayed marketing is something that's recommended by NAR, the National Association of Realtors. But Zillow's going against and saying, well,
It's our platform.
It's our platform, exactly, which, something we said about that as well is overreach to tell them that they have to do something with their company as well. So it'll be interesting to see, because these are two giants going back and forth with each other. So we just kind of stay out of it, and we'll just see see what happens.
And Zillow used to be the biggest. So for them to say that they're not going to grab on, they thought they were kind of manipulating the market, saying they're not going to take these delayed market. Compass, who has just bought up, now it's Compass, Anywhere, Redfin, Rocket, all of these big conglomerates. It's now one big super company. They said, we'll take everything. So now they're the biggest listing source out there.
Which is fascinating, because as a seller, you have no idea, or as a buyer who's looking for homes, you really don't know that this big war is going on. And the war is over you, right? They want attention. They want views. They want clicks. They want
your contact
They want
information.
your contact information. They want you to click through and try
That's
to
why
find
we're
your
getting so
property
many
there.
calls on personal loans, because it got in all of this mess.
That's right.
Their contact info's out there.
That's right. So, so this whole war is going on. It'll be interesting to see. But I would challenge you, if you're watching this and you're not in tune with that, to start becoming in tune with it a little bit. Pay attention to when you see a headline about what's going on with Zillow and Compass. Try to figure out, because it does directly impact you at some point, at some level. And eventually, when the dust settles, there will probably be two giants standing still, but they will both have black eyes and bloody noses.
And we'll have more regulations.
And we'll have more regulations. That's
More
right.
forms.
More forms. Well, I'm just going to go around the room. We have just about a minute left. Pre-marketing strategy. Should it be legal, and should it be used? Shannon, start with you.
I think it should be. Yeah, I think there's plenty of cases where it's beneficial.
Okay, Aspen. Your
Yes,
thoughts?
absolutely. You should be able to sell your home how you would like to sell your home, and have your privacy be fully intact.
Paul.
Yeah, of course, I agree with both of those. But I also think it's case by case. Some some houses should be on the market and some shouldn't. But I think it should be between you and the seller to figure out that strategy and what's best for them.
Well said. I would agree with all three of you. I think it should be the decision ultimately is driven by the seller. We're here to provide information, to give guidance, and allow them to make an educated decision. And if they want to pre-market their home, more power to them. There may be a lot more reasons other than price or market demand that push that seller in that direction. And of course, we want to do the best by our clients in every avenue. So fantastic discussion. Thank you all for leaning into that. Gosh, I think that was the quickest 30 minutes that I've seen in a while. So, but thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. If you like our content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a fantastic form on our Facebook page, which is our newsletter we send out weekly. Paul, thank you for doing that. And it has all kinds of great information. We have listings that are coming up, activity that's been going, wonderful, helpful, funny memes that Shannon posts all the time. If you're laughing to yourself when you see some of those, that's Shannon there, and beautifully designed by Aspen. And I just kind of wander around aimlessly. But if you like our content, please like and subscribe to our YouTube and our Facebook channel. Of course, go to sjcbroker.com and you can schedule a private consultation with any one of us here at the Lions Group. We'd love to sit down with you, whether you're buying or selling. In today's market, we can give you a big advantage. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning into The Den, powered by the Lions Group. If you got value from today's episode, hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. Check the show notes with direct links to our buyer and seller video series. Your inside track to making smarter moves in real estate. Want to take it further? Visit sjcbroker.com to learn more about the Lions Group or schedule a private consultation today. Complex markets demand smart strategies. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, we're here to give you the edge. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.